Hey, I'm Matt Jones with the 218 Group. I appreciate you taking your time to tune in with us today. I have the opportunity to have Paul Nixon with us. Paul travels around the world talking to church leaders, and this is one of those times that his knowledge and experience, I believe, can be beneficial to you. So, Paul, thank you for taking some time to join us from California.
Actually, D.C. today.
And D.C. today.
California.
Oh, okay. So you're sheltering in place in D.C. instead of beautiful sunny California.
That's exactly right.
Well, that's probably unfortunate for you. Versus
I wish
all the
I were
places
there,
you could
but
be.
this isn't bad. Springtime in Washington is not too bad. So
Okay.
It's all right.
Okay, very good. Well, again, thank you for taking time to be here and share a little bit. So, as you're out and you're talking to pastors and doing the coaching, because I know you work with a lot of different size types, churches, what are some of the consistent things that you're hearing that pastors are concerned about or trying to address, specifically related to the coronavirus and just the shifting they feel of systems that they've known and patterns they've known beginning to kind of fall apart under them?
So I need to just say up front that the people I talk to probably are not representative of the population.
Okay.
The people that I coach tend to be a little more of the innovators, a little more early adopter, a little more at dis-ease with the status quo and kind of leaning forward. So most of them are kind of energized by this.
Okay.
So, I mean, everybody's having to think about, well, the offering in March was half of what it was the month before.
Right.
It wasn't everywhere, but in some places that was the case. And so there's those concerns, but nobody seems to be leading with those concerns in my conversations. They seem to be more amazed that there's creativity, amazed that people are resilient, amazed that they preached to twice as many people last week as usual, all that kind of stuff. So I think there is maybe that's just the first phase of this while we're still a little bit adrenaline pumping, or maybe they're just drinking lots of coffee, where they are. We all live very close to a coffee pot. I can see mine right over here.
A lot of coffee and a lot of sugar. Those are the two things that are high sugar intake.
So I don't know if after 3 weeks of this we get into kind of phase 2 where it's like, oh my, what has happened here? But pretty upbeat from what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Pretty upbeat.
So why is it just you're working with innovators, those type of things? Are these typically people that they're doing something from scratch? Are they all church planters?
No, not necessarily. No, there are some church planters in all stages of church ministry development. There's people that have launched public worship, people that haven't. There are pastors of 200-year-old churches that are trying to do new things or have recently merged with a group of young people to create a new thing. I mean, there's all kinds of situations, but I think in every case, they're trying to connect with their neighbors.
Yeah.
They're trying to break through to a population that seems impervious to are getting their attention.
Okay.
And all of a sudden we have their attention. All of a sudden everybody feels this vulnerability where there is an openness to conversation, to community, to neighbors, to spiritual conversation like we haven't seen.
Okay.
So they find that encouraging.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. So people that have already been trying to figure out how do we connect with people in a different way for a different time, their mind's already into doing that. Like things should be changing, so they're not change averse, they're not risk averse. Whereas a lot of the pastors that I'm talking with and other people we've heard from are more concerned about things falling apart around them. That they have a pattern and a routine that they like and they're comfortable with and has been working to some extent, has been working for them. I think that's debatable. In fact, I've heard you make that point, that it's debatable whether a lot of the systems we've developed as far as what church is really are working. I'll let you kind of go into that.
80% of our churches were dying in the house before they got thrown out.
Yeah.
So they have really not a whole lot to lose. Yeah. I mean, granted, it will speed up the decline of some late life cycle churches, maybe. Probably the longer this goes on, the more disruptive it is. But I think the disruption is the possibility of new birth. So for those that are interested in living into that, this becomes really interesting. For those that are sort of hoping to sort of surf on out the wave of the Christendom paradigm before they retire and some other generation can worry about the new stuff, must be terribly annoying because now the wave died before they were ready to stop, and they have to deal with a church that's moving through radical transition. Technologically, if no other way. I mean, from this point forward, church will be gathering in person, and it will be gathering online, probably for the rest of this century. That's what it is, and it's like, oh my gosh, now I got to do that.
Yeah.
But they're getting good at it, whether they like it or not. They're getting better every week.
Right. I did see you post that at one point, was just the churches you've been checking on, that you saw huge leaps from week to week.
Oh my goodness.
As far as,
I can't wait for this weekend to see what, we'll have all kinds of improvement. So
yeah. So what are some of the things that you have seen, that as far as the technology and how people are adopting that and utilizing it? What seems to really be working versus the things that people are trying that they seem to be abandoning quickly?
I don't know. I mean, it's too fast to know what people are abandoning. I just thought they got better at doing what they were doing. I think in some ways, trying to do a service with 10 people socially distanced in a sanctuary, I saw one of those, and the content was excellent, but it looked weird. Why is everybody standing so far from each other? I said, this looks like some kind of rite out of a Mormon temple or something. I don't know what that is, but it just looked really weird. Yeah. And it's like, that's creepy looking. The next week, they were all in their living rooms with decent lighting, and you could see them in kind of a Zoom sort of way, and it was like, this is very pleasant. And when one of them would lead in a prayer or scripture or so forth, the screen would go to them, and it was decently produced. I mean, they made enormous strides in a week, and I presume it will get better.
Okay.
I think one of the growing edges is, how do we do children's ministry in? I mean, it's always been hard to do a children's sermon. There's been lots of debate about it. Is that any good at all?
Yeah.
But we've got to do better.
Right.
If we're going to try to do those as a part of this, we'll have to improve that.
Yeah. I was watching one church that they actually had their children's person do Facebook Live for the children's ministry.
Good.
Like they kind of ran through their normal worship and the things that they would do, and then that was a second thing at a later time.
Yeah, I think that's better.
To where the parents and family could get to do the worship experience, and it's like, okay, now we're going to do the children's ministry stuff. And so she was there and engaged the kids, and I think it was a brilliant move from what I saw.
One of the churches that I coach that I think is really doing well, they're a new church, they found that the orange curriculum, which is a common children's curriculum that's all over the place,
right,
they said was very easily adaptable. There were some things that just didn't work, so it's just like you toss them, but there were some things that could be very easily adapted. And my expectation is, because I know that company that produces that, is that give them 2 or 3 more weeks, they will be putting out weekly pieces to sort of replace or modify some of the stuff they've had.
Okay.
They will be adapting that,
Yeah.
And I would think other curriculum people will too, but that group in particular seems to be sort of on the edge.
Yeah. So I want to go back to kind of the point you made earlier, is that this is it's one of those times where people are either looking backwards, trying to regain a past that really doesn't exist, or they're embracing the future. And kind of from your perspective, there's not a middle ground.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess there's not a middle ground. There is no back to normal. It's just not there. I mean, good luck with that. I mean, there's just not going to be a normal to get back to. First of all, when you come back, you're just going to be different. If you've been online very long, you've made some new friends. You've probably lost a few, gained a few. Maybe you've gained more than you've lost. Maybe the other way, but it will be different. It will never be the same.
And so the expectation shouldn't be, because like you said, there are a lot of people that are hoping that. And I think that terminology that you shared with me about this, some people looking at this as a blizzard, something just to be weathered, and it's not really just a storm that's going to blow over. It's the beginning of something very different.
Yeah, and I hate to think of it as an ice age, because that sounds terribly, unpleasant.
Yeah.
But it is. We were already moving through social change, and this has just sort of pushed us on through that a little faster. Our churches will just undergo a lot of change, and the way that we do community in the United States will be permanently impacted. The way we do business, the way we do church, the way we do school, everything will be a little bit different or a lot different, depending on what we learn, what works, and how we innovate during this time.
Yeah.
So.
In some of the coaching I'm doing in the business world, that is definitely one of the issues that we're hearing, especially larger scale employers looking at, is this is a test run for them on people working from home. Like,
Yes.
how effective is this? Because they can decrease their operational costs significantly if they can decrease their brick and mortar footprint.
Absolutely.
And so they're doing this. People who've never thought about working from home, they're experiencing it and figuring out what can and can't work, which has been humorous to watch the stuff online as far as people learning how to do that and things about it.
I have been, with a few very important exceptions, I have been encouraging churches to build less for several years, and build less and do more often. Don't try to build for one mass gathering, at 10:30 on Sunday morning, but build for 6 gatherings,
Okay.
So we already have been sort of diminishing our investment. Well, at least the cost of construction just goes through the roof, but
Right.
we've been diminishing the scale of our physical buildings. This will push that further.
Okay.
There's no doubt of it. And I would say it's a 50-50 that in every church planter boot camp in the year 2025, we'd say first thing is you launch online worship. And even as you're building your small groups, which will sometimes meet for a potluck and then be online, and then you'll eventually launch physical worship, and in that order. I think that's coming.
Which is a complete change.
Yes, it is indeed.
From everything. But I think you're right. And I had the chance to interview someone from a church that does online worship really well. I want to change it, not online worship, online church.
Okay.
They do that very, very well. And the thing that he really pointed out was that he looks at his role as the online campus pastor as being a small group pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Not someone who's simply providing a window through a camera lens into an existing worship service, but that his job is to be there and to be the pastor of that group, the people that are in the chat rooms, and he talking with them and praying for them and those kind of things. And that I thought was a very intelligent shift from where most churches are when they talk about online streaming, and I think you've seen this too. It's how can we get a camera in the room and just let people see what we normally do, no changes to the service, no additional anything. It's just the ability to kind of have a window into what we do with that. So an online community, the ability to build community, right, is completely shifting.
Yeah. So the very nature of what people need in a living room is different than what they need in a large gathering room. And so, I could see where it's comforting for some of the old folks to get into the sanctuary and show the pastor standing in the pulpit of an empty room. So that's fine.
Yeah.
You can do that. But it may be better to, just put on an Auburn sweatshirt and sit on your couch with a decent camera and sound and just talk to folks. That may be a much more engaging way to engage with people that are also sitting in their Sunday morning grubbies, having just had breakfast and, about to mow the grass or whatever they do. And so in that way, I think it's more accessible to just kind of be there with people. But there's different churches that will experiment with this in different ways. I think shorter and more interactive, more personal, more chatty is probably what we need to do. I also think that as we go back indoors, which we will do one of these days, hopefully sooner than later, but we never know.
Yeah.
I think that what stays online may be a different audience, and I think just simply filming what we do inside for the people outside the room is not necessarily what they need. They might need something that's a little more customized. Maybe it's the same scripture we're working on, but we work in a different format, and we speak to the people that we're engaging. Whether they be younger, more techie, different life needs, less church experience, whatever.
Yeah.
We need to kind of know who are we gathering in this venue, and let's design ministry that makes sense to engage with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of churches have. There's been a lot of things posted on Facebook about how churches historically complained about Facebook and social media, and now all of a sudden they're having to learn it and to embrace it and those kind of things. And in a sense, that brings the church into the world that most of our church members live in and day out. But it also bridges beyond just that and into the community. So as you've worked with churches that have been effective utilizing kind of online approaches to build community and to reach out and those kind of things, have you seen specific trends or traits that are there to where they've been able to, bring the gospel message into a community of people through an online area that didn't have any connection to the church, to where they've truly connected with new people?
Yeah. I mean, I've coached a person outside of DC for several years. We're done with that project, where it was planting an online campus. But again, it was a mix of people. You had some people that were coming into the online campus, and then they lived in the area and they came on in the house. Okay. So you had that. You had people that kind of moved through it. You had people that moved from being in the church building to sort of be to seeding the online campus, and that became their primary.
Yeah.
You had people that would go to worship on the online campus but attend a small group on the church campus. Then you had a group of people that began to invite or began to lurk that were really new.
Okay.
And what they began to do is to realize we have to have next steps for those folks. Next steps in terms of relationship and in terms of learning and discipleship. That church, which, by the way, is Christ UMC, United Methodist Church in Fairfax Station, Virginia, did or put together the very first online alpha groups in the United States. According to Alpha, they said they didn't know of any others.
Okay.
At that point. My guess is that any church that wants to do online alpha, call them, because they know how to do it. And there will be a lot of online alpha this year. There will be a lot, and for every year hereafter. They realized you have to create next steps online. Now, they were constantly sort of behind the curve figuring that out and learning, because they were really out there in innovative space. Pre-coronavirus, only early adopters were really stepping into that kind of space to try that. Now, everybody's kind of wading into this, and
right.
So you think about if I have a bunch of people that are lurking in the shadows, on the either watching what we do live or watching webcasts of worship presentations that we put out this weekend. What do I do with those people? I don't even know who they are. I just see that normally we have 200 in the sanctuary, and there were 700 this week. So who are these other 500 people?
Yeah.
I think to continue to do what you can to invite them back from week to week to week, and so that they begin to see and experience a continuity. I mean, a series, a really compelling life issue series, as soon as we can get one going.
Okay.
That kind of takes us from week to week is really important right now. We have more seekers than usual. And then to offer, perhaps on the website, to offer just conversation groups, and I'll just throw out very undeveloped examples. People can do a lot better than this, but a group for parents whose preschoolers are getting cabin fever, talking about what are you doing with your kids. People that are dealing with the blues around any number of things, getting stuck inside. Single people, people that would love to be out, single people who'd love to be out dating and meeting people, and now they're kind of stuck and dealing with that. There's any number of life conditions or stresses that people are facing right now, including unemployment, where some people would be willing to just be in a chat group with some other people that are kind of working on that. No heavy preachy anything, no prayer even, but just convened by the church as neighbors kind of just talking. And if we can get people into those circles, email addresses will be revealed, and we can begin to nurture relationship. But it's all about relationship. But right now, we just got a lot of people in the shadows out there that are sort of watching.
Yeah.
But they are watching.
One thing I'm struck by, and I think this has been consistent for you, not just in this particular environment, but while there's a lot of stuff written about the demise of the church overall in current society, and you and I have had this conversation, been in some meetings where we've talked about that, just the changing nature of that, you've remained, and even seem to be more now, optimistic about the future of the church. Mm-hmm. So where does that come from, or what are the things you're seeing that really bring that up within you, where in the face of people talking about declining worship, declining church membership, declining giving to churches, that you still maintain and hold on to that, and are that the champion for having an optimistic approach?
I don't know. That's a good question. I wrote this book called I Refuse to Lead a Dying Church, which sounds so arrogant. It's like, well, that may be where you have to serve. I mean, what are you going to do? You're just going to just, pout in the corner? But that's not what I meant by that. I meant to say, we're going to find where the grass is still growing around here. We're going to find the shoots of life, even if there's a lot of discouraging data and things that are sort of going down. We're going to look for anything hopeful, which could be the 90-year-old lady that starts a new ministry. I mean, that's new life. It could be the fact that we have a group of people that are lurking online and they're paying attention to our conversations, and we're encouraged by that. We're going to anything that's green and perking up through the dirt. We're going to pay attention to that. Okay. So that's kind of been my mode of operation for a while. I just got back from England before it was dangerous to go to England. It's more dangerous probably to come here, but anyway, you can't do that anymore. But I spent better part of January, working with British Methodists, and oh my goodness, what a sorry situation in terms of late life cycle of a denomination.
Okay.
Churches down to single digits and so forth.
Wow.
And I came back so encouraged, because it's almost like I said, as this old stuff just finally cooks down, all these old worship services and old ways of doing and trying to keep the building up, it's just almost like bramble that just needs to be cleared so some stuff can grow up. And I saw all this innovation that was just trying to push up out of the ground everywhere. And I kept thinking, if we could just free this person up from having to do so much administrative and tending to all of the old bramble, and free them up to tend to the new growth, England would have a revival. And I just came away encouraged. I said, if indeed half of that bramble collapses in the next decade, which you're probably going to lose half of their institutional church in that denomination, it'll be great. The soil will be aerated. We can get some growth going again. So
okay. So that alone is where you diverge from most people. Because I kind of have a similar philosophy that I've projected as being kind of maybe even North American in general, is that we have this fixation with the prolonging of life. No matter what, we can't let something die. We got to do everything we can, and that people really apply to the church when the church really needs to go through its life cycle.
It does. It does, and just so a church comes to an end of a life cycle, the legacy, the kingdom of God doesn't end, but just because that church's ministry ends, changes, or morphs. Yeah, it does. That's normal. And we are legacy of a bunch of Turkish churches that are all gone. I went touring all those towns in Ephesus and other places. I didn't see anything but a mosque anywhere, and yet our faith was forged in churches in those places. And it's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, because one or a handful of local churches go down does not impede the ability of the church.
It's a movement. It's a movement through time. Yeah, it's a spirit movement.
Yeah, and you've made, and I can see where your optimism comes in, because you've made the decision not to go in and try and do CPR on churches that are dying, but to go in and find churches that are showing signs of life and figure out how to fan that life into full growth and to encourage that. And
by design, I mean, I get assigned to projects. I get hired by people to work with them when there's a hopefulness or there's a new thing happening. That's why, again, my viewpoint gets a little skewed because I work in that sector. However, I've never seen a situation where there was a lack of hope, ever. If there's any one person that still has a sparkle in their eye, God can do something in that place.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, Paul, I appreciate you taking your time to be with me. I'm sorry you're not in California, but again, D.C., maybe you can go out. It's cherry blossom time, isn't it, in D.C.?
Oh, it's just kind of peaked, and the cherry blossoms were gorgeous.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, they were really nice.
Yeah, so not a bad place to be during that time.
Yeah, it's all right.
Great. So I appreciate that. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you and learn more about the work you do or Epicenter, those kind of things, how would they get in touch with you?
I think the easiest thing, our website is epicentergroup.org. Epicentergroup.org. We have some resources that are posted there and the links to other places, or just to reach out and to say hello, and we can chat.
Great. Well, I hope that works well for you. And for those of you who have decided to stay with us through this interview, I appreciate you taking your time to be with us. I'm Matt Jones from the 218 Group. Please like, follow, and share this page if you found it's been helpful to you. Let other people know that this is a resource available to them.